Hello and welcome. Have you ever wondered where the laws that govern our modern society actually come from? Well, they have several sources, like customs or court decisions. But today, one source stands above all the rest: legislation. In this explainer, we're going to unpack why Vidion, or the process of creating laws through a legislature, has become so incredibly powerful.
The central theme of our entire discussion today really revolves around this one statement. In English, in the 20th century, legislation has emerged as the most vital source of law. And in Hindi, 20वीं शताब्दी में विधायन विधि के अत्यंत शक्तिशाली स्रोत के रूप में उभरा है. So what exactly happened that by the time the 20th century rolled around, legislation became the most important, the most essential source of law? We're going to analyze this statement piece by piece and uncover all the reasons behind it.
But before we can answer the why, we really need to understand the what. So what exactly is this legislation, or vidhayan, that we're talking about? What does it mean in simple terms?
Like with so many big concepts, the meaning is hidden right there in the name. The word legislation comes from two Latin words. The first is legis, which means law or vidhi, and the second is latio, which means making or proposing. So if you put them together, it literally means the making of law. It's simply the process of creating law.
The famous legal scholar Austin explained this in a very straightforward way. According to him, legislation just means any form of lawmaking. It doesn't matter if it's the parliament creating a major new act for the entire country or your local municipality making a new rule about sanitation. If a law is being made, that right there is legislation.
Okay, so now that we've got a handle on what it is, let's move on. It's not like all legislation is the same or operates at the same level. Based on its power and its origin, it's broadly divided into two main categories.
And these two types are supreme and subordinate legislation. First, let's talk about supreme legislation. As the name makes pretty clear, this is the highest form. It's at the very top. It comes directly from the highest power in the country. It's sovereign authority, like the parliament in India. No other body can challenge or change a law made by it. On the other hand, you have subordinate legislation. This is made by an authority that has been delegated the power to make laws from a higher, supreme authority. Think of rules made by a university or a city council. The supreme authority, Parliament, can change or even cancel these rules whenever it wants.
The entire concept of subordinate legislation hinges on one key word: delegation. This means that a supreme body, like Parliament, hands down some of its law-making power to authorities below it. Now, why is this necessary? Because Parliament can't possibly make laws for every single minor issue for every specific department in the country. So what it does is it creates a broad framework and then delegates the task of filling in the details to other bodies.
Now, even this delegated power comes in many different forms. This power is given to different bodies for different purposes. The famous jurist Salmond identified 5 main types. So let's take a look at what this delegated lawmaking actually looks like in the real world.
First is colonial legislation, which is now mostly historical. Think of how local bodies in British India were given limited lawmaking powers. Second is executive legislation, and this one is very common. When Parliament passes a law, the detailed rules needed to actually implement it are created by government departments, which are the executive branch. Third is judicial legislation, like when high courts and the Supreme Court create rules of procedure to make their own operations and those of lower courts run smoothly. Fourth is something we see every day: municipal legislation. The bylaws that your city's corporation makes for traffic, sanitation, or building construction are a perfect example. And fifth is autonomous legislation, which is when universities create rules for their students or companies create internal governance rules for their employees.
So far, we've understood the what and the types of legislation, but now let's get back to our big question. Why did legislation become such a dominant source of law in the first place? What's so special about it that the older sources just didn't have? What is its superpower?
It has several key advantages. The first and foremost is its abrogative power. This is the power to change or completely abolish old, outdated, or unjust laws. Only legislation can do this. Second, it promotes the separation of powers, which brings efficiency to the system. The lawmakers, the legislature, and the law interpreters, the judiciary, are kept separate. Third is declaration. A law is officially declared before it's enforced, so everyone knows what the new rule is. Fourth, it provides clarity. Generally, a piece of legislation is far clearer, more direct, and more concise than a long, complex court judgment. And finally, it's proactive. It doesn't wait for a problem to happen. It can anticipate future needs and create laws for them ahead of time.
To understand these benefits even better, let's put legislation head-to-head with the two older sources of law in a kind of showdown. On one side, we have modern legislation, and on the other, we have custom and precedent, which are old court decisions.
First up, legislation versus custom. Legislation is created deliberately, with conscious planning. Customs, on the other hand, are formed from habits that have been followed for years, generation after generation, with no real conscious design behind them. But the biggest difference lies in their power. A new piece of legislation can, in an instant, declare a centuries-old custom illegal. But a custom can never change a new law. That is the ultimate power difference right there.
And that is precisely why, in today's fast-changing world, where new challenges pop up every day, we need laws that are clear, written down, and can be adapted when needed. This is why modern societies don't rely on customs, but on legislation.
Now let's compare legislation with precedent. The biggest difference here is their time frame. Legislation is prospective. It's forward-looking. It makes laws for situations that will happen in the future. A court decision or precedent is retrospective. It applies to a case that has already happened. On top of that, legislation can create entirely new laws and erase old ones, while a court can only interpret the existing law. That's why legislation is generally considered much more powerful and efficient.
So, after this whole discussion, after comparing it with customs and precedents, we arrive at our final analysis. What are the two final knockout arguments that establish legislation as the supreme source of law in the modern era?
The entire analysis really boils down to just two main reasons. Only two, but they are so powerful that they essentially crown legislation as the king of lawmaking.
The first reason is state authority. Laws made by legislators are followed because they have the full power of the state behind them. The entire machinery of the state works to enforce them. The second, and equally important reason, is public opinion. In modern democracies, the people who make the laws, the legislators, are the elected representatives of the people. Therefore, it's understood that the laws they create have the support of the public.
So, the bottom line of this entire explainer is this. Legislation is supreme because it's a modern solution. It effectively addresses the shortcomings of older sources of law like custom and precedent, things like them being rigid, slow, and sometimes unclear, and provides a system that is clear, adaptable, and authoritative.
If you learned something new from this explainer and found this information useful, please be sure to like this video. And for more detailed explainers on complex topics just like this one, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you.